This episode of CrowCast is brought to you by Harvest the Fleurieu, Adelaide's favourite family-owned strawberry farm in Mount Compass and also the Wollonga Farmers Markets. Don't forget to take the family down for their season opening weekend on the 10th and 11th of November. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 40th and last episode of Tuesday Night Live for 2018. It's been a long journey and probably not the year that we expected when we had our episode number one. But anyway, it is what it is, and we got tons to talk about in our last episode this year. And we have a full hand on deck welcoming Macca. How you going, Macca?
Oh, well, I'm struggling a bit with vertigo at the moment, so I might be a bit more crazy than usual, but we'll do our best.
That's those dizzying heights that the Crows reached this year, or?
No, I don't think that was it, no.
And Nikki, how you going, Nick? You're under the weather too?
I am a little under the weather, but I have to say a nice little shout out to PJ Crows. He reckons there's a longer time between CrowCasts than there are between Ollie Wine's disposal.
And Donkey, you got your microphone sorted there, mate?
Am I better now? Am I coming through loud and clear?
Well, not too bad. Bearable.
Oh, that's nice. That's the first time you called me bearable. That's lovely.
I was going to say, when are you ever better, Donk?
Yeah.
And, of course, right, the voice of reason, Pete. How you going, Peter?
Good, Fane. Good, everybody. How are we all going? Great to be here for the last episode of Tuesday Night Live for 2018.
Absolutely. And without any further ado, let's get into some Crows news first, shall we?
Well, obviously, the monster story that came out through the week, of course, was the draft, and it was such an incredibly anticipated draft, and yet as it commenced, it sort of went, reasonably smoothly without too many surprises, particularly in the first sort of 10 or so selections. And
whoops, what's going on there?
Sorry
about that. Keep going.
That's right. Yep, and so anyway, our first choice was Tasmanian midfielder Chase Jones. Actually, for those of you who heard the interview with Matt Barmer a couple of weeks ago, he actually had us taking Chase at pick 9 as it was, following a first bid that we had for Taron Thomas, who ended up going at 8. So if we, I guess, just look at the draft picks as we took them, everybody, what were your thoughts about Chase? He was certainly tipped to go around. There was a bolter, and he was tipped to go around that sort of 8, 9, 10 mark. So it wasn't really a huge surprise when we selected him. I think that probably a few people were maybe looking at Jai Caldwell at that section, who went to the pick after us at GWS. So what were your thoughts, everybody, on Chase Jones?
Well, firstly, I guess he looks like he's going to be a very handy pickup, and he'll play a lot of games with us. So there's no doubt about that. He's got we seem to have had a real big emphasis on speed and also aggression to get the ball, and he fits both of those categories. And I suppose the one surprise really was the fact that most of us thought that we would take Caldwell. But I guess Burton had some influence on that and said his hamstring's already stuffed, so I can't do anything with him. Get a new one. So we went and got Chase. But look, I think he's a very good choice. I think that given the fact that there's obviously something about Caldwell that didn't appeal to us, or whether Chase appealed more to us. But I trust our drafters. They know a lot more than I do, so I'll say he'll be good for us.
I liked pretty much those first two picks that, as Macca said, you've got that speed and the aggression. But for both of them as well, it's endurance. It's that repeat effort that they're going to be able to do. And that's something we know we've been lacking.
Excellent point, Nikki.
And it's if you actually look at all of our draft picks in the national draft, they all have very good endurance, and even into the rookies.
That was a real theme, wasn't it? That seemed to be quite consistent across all our picks, was a desire to have someone who could run and who could repeat effort.
And I do have to say, I love the fact that he was slightly shocked. He's like, hang on, that's my name. It was slightly adorable. He does look like a child.
Who are we talking about? Which one are we talking about there?
Jones.
Oh, Chase Jones.
When his name was called out, his reaction video for that was, hey, that's me. He actually didn't realise initially that he'd been.
Any other thoughts on Chase Jones before we move on to Ned McHenry?
Well, I just liked his. I like the look of him in front of goal. I think he looks like he's a bit hungry and wants to have a goal. So I like the look of that. Looks like he's going to push forward and looks like he's a decent finisher. But that's from a 5-minute highlight video, so maybe he's missed a few as well.
Yeah, but the fact, Donk, that he's also played in the Tassie League against grown men and played very nicely by some of the results we've seen. So I think that might mean, and it's very interesting that Hamish actually told the players it's up to them to help fast track these players to get them in the team.
We then went out to, after there was a couple of other academy selections, Ned McHenry was the pick at 16, and that's probably when we always anticipate a Hamish special. He was one who I think that there was a few pundits that had him coming to the Crows, but certainly not at our second selection. So he was thought to go, sort of probably as the original selection sat, closer probably to our pick 21. A few people had Ned McHenry out. So he was definitely talked about as being a potential to go to the Crows. But in true Hamish style, he has had a little bit of a reach there, I think, and we've got Ned at 16. But, from his highlights, and, he looks like, as you pointed out, Nicky, great endurance and looks like a real goer in terms of his tackling as well.
I really like that aspect of his game, Pete, the fact that he doesn't mind getting in amongst it. He's a bit of a niggler apparently, and doesn't want to tackle. Bit of a concern maybe about his size, but aside from that, and I think it seemed to me that our draft strategy was impacted to some degree by the apparent deal that was struck with Carlton, and it almost seemed as if all our picks got pushed up a spot to accommodate that pick going to Carlton in that crazy trade that they did. So I'm not disappointed that we reached a little bit for him. There's probably only one player that I'm disappointed about, and we'll get to him, but certainly McHenry I think is someone that we could certainly do with in terms of tenacity. But I guess, as I mentioned earlier, it's his size. I'm worried that all of a sudden we're a bit of a mosquito fleet.
Yeah, we've got some big boys already in the team, though, so you are right about the size. We've definitely gone in those first two picks with the smaller boys, but I think that they're more selected for purpose in terms of what they'll do rather than what height they're going to be. And as you said, he's a fierce little bugger, and McHenry, and he loves to tackle. I mean, I just couldn't believe one episode of Play or What's he actually did 3 tackles and 3 different blokes in the space of about 10 seconds.
I saw that. I saw that. It was good.
I'd be exhausted after the first tackle, and he just gets up and has another go. I think we're going to really like him, and he'll be a combination of a forward come relief midfielder, I think, and I think that Phoenix got it absolutely spot on when he said, I thought both of our picks were probably one back, and but we brought them up one, and because of the deal with Carlton, and I think we wanted these boys, and we wanted them in preference to anybody else, and we took those. So I think Phoenix was absolutely spot on with that assumption that he made there, and but I think we'll be very happy with this boy. I do like him.
Yeah, I'm very excited about him. I'm very excited that he's a bit of a fruitcake as well. Fits a bit with the donkey personality. I really like that. And but I also wonder whether he's the sort of, if they're thinking that this 6-6-6 formation thing's going to be around a while, having him in the centre square laying 3 tackles in the space of 2 seconds is probably going to be pretty good if you can't flood the place. So that might be a little bit of a strategy we use with him. But he looks like he's got a bit of flair. Just wants to keep going and going and going. And they say talent, hard work beats talent, and he doesn't look like he's scared of hard work, and he's got a fair bit of talent. So I reckon he could be a pretty little magical little gem.
Anybody
Charlie
that goes
Cameron
for
client? Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, I was just saying, anybody that goes for a 30-kilometre jog.
Yeah, what's that all about? For God's sake.
Well, he just started running and thinking.
Yeah.
And he just kept running, going, there's cars on the road. There's a lot of cars on the road. Maybe I'll just keep going. I'll go to Barwon Heads. So he did.
Nicky, just interrupted when Jason McKay made a brilliant little comment that he saw more tackles from McHenry in his promo than Ratkin's career.
Speaking of Ratkins, though, he might be a little worried about our later picks.
Yes, he might be.
Yeah, he just on McHenry, his highlights package, and that's all we can really go off. Is there was certainly one when he was playing at club level. There was a part of his package there where he's run on for the 1-2 and he's run forward, and some of his agility to get rid of a couple of players and then find some space and deliver the ball accurately to a teammate was quite astonishing. So he's certainly got some tricks. I know that there's a lot of talk about the fact that he's tenacious and that he he likes to tackle and all of those, lippy and all those good things. But there's a bit of talent there as well. He showed some real agility in that little highlight set. So looks like a good pickup. And I'll add to the chorus of agreeing with you, Fiend. I think that there was something at play there in terms of sliding the picks up a little bit to accommodate that pick swap, which was the next bit of action that we had. So I guess we'll move to that, where we got rid of what was originally pick 16, I think it was, that pushed out.
Yep.
And then our next year's first as well, for Carlton's first next year. What did we all think of that trade?
Brilliant. I cackled when it happened. Like, Carlton, what are you doing, you dipshits?
Oh, we robbed them.
Look, I was really disappointed with it. I thought, no, really, I thought it was a ridiculous thing to do, and then I realised that I wasn't a Carlton supporter. And then I was stoked.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
By all accounts, that Sauce has actually said that they were in discussions with us at least 3 days beforehand, but the phone call from Carlton started before our pick 13 about that pick 16.
Well, they were trying to get in front. Who were they trying to get in front of, Nick? There was, I can't remember. There was someone they were trying to get in front of for Stoker.
Yeah, they were trying to get someone, for Stoker, and we kind of held off, which I know there were some comments made on Big Footy. They took the screen cap of Justin Reid seems to be in control here. What's going on? Because when the McHenry pick was going on, he came in and put his finger up one, and now we can kind of figure out that that's him signalling we've got Carlton's first rounder.
Yeah.
That's what that was all about. So he was just on that. I actually loved the setup of our room that we did on the night, because you saw everybody else had their tables out and everybody was crowded around the table. We had that one table. We just had a recruitment team sitting on there. In the background, there was Thomas and Fagan and Pike setting up against the wall, incidentally, the glass, so that you couldn't get a reflection off the glass on the screen. So they were standing in the way of that. So that was actually quite sneaky.
Yeah, I did work that out.
And then wherever Reed was and the phones, he was high. It was set up so that the camera, because they had that same camera set up in the room and it's up high, the camera couldn't see it.
No.
So
Nikki, you missed
you
missed the most strategic thing of the whole setup, because everyone was bleating. Well, everyone was bleating about Burton being the guy that handed out the Guernseys. But you can bet your life.
No.
You can bet your life they got him out of the room for that very.
Yeah. that was brilliant.
Reedy and Ogilvy have gone, there's no freaking way that Burton's in the room with us. Give him the Guernseys to hand out.
It's so obvious now.
Wait, Phoenix, you stole that from me. As soon as it was named, I posted that on Big Footy.
Oh, I didn't read that.
I thought it was a brilliant tactical move.
Great minds think alike, Nick.
It was really interesting that our room setup was very different from everybody else's. But PJ has just pointed out that Paul Thomas actually knows Chase Jones and his family.
Oh, there you go.
So that's
his mum was originally from Adelaide. His mum was from Adelaide, so
his mum's from Adelaide.
Boys Club picked it.
You'd imagine that Hamish would know the family too, being Tassie. There's only 9 people that live there, isn't there?
That's the only bit that worries me about Chase. I just don't really like Tasmanians. They're just a bit weird.
No. Just on the trade, though, I could see Carlton's rationale for what they did. I mean, we all talked about the fact that when there was chatter around about what they were going to do in this draft, because they only had pick 1 and that was really all they had, and were they going to try and split that into a couple of other picks just to get themselves sort of into some later picks. And so I can certainly see the rationale. Stoker was a player that they were keen on. He'd slid through. And so they got the man that they wanted. And I think that's the ideal situation with live trading, is that if you're there, as we were, and we with currency, and somebody needs that currency for an opportunity that they see, then I think I might have through the week made the analogy of a shark. We're there, and we can charge a premium for that currency because we've got it and they need it. And Carlton, I think they've retained a first round pick next year, as well as getting themselves into the back into the draft this year. So, we can joke about Carlton and how they may finish, and we may end up top 4 and they can end up bottom 4, and it looks like a great trade for us, and I'm I've no doubt that it will be. But I can certainly see it wasn't like there was no logic to it at all from Carlton's perspective.
Actually, isn't his name Stocker? Not Stoker?
Yeah. Stoker, sorry.
Yeah, Stoker.
Stoker, sorry.
Yeah, but actually, just going on from what you're saying, I suppose their logic is that if they'd just gone in with Walsh and nothing else, it looks pretty barren, and also what they're doing probably voluntarily accepting forfeiting something next year to get something this year.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's the only way you could get any sense out of what they did, because with the best will in the world, it's very hard to imagine them finishing certainly any higher than 5th from the bottom, but maybe in the bottom 4. And you would hope that we would be in the top 6. So, it's probably a lost situation for them, and a loss in terms of also lost opportunity, because there could be some very good players in the top 4 next year, next 5 or top 5. So, but it's to get that opportunity this year and bring it forward a year, and I think that's what they've done.
Well, I mean, they've obviously
Sorry.
They've obviously thought that 12 months into Stocker is worth more than whoever's going to go top, 1 to 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Next year. And I'm with you, Pete. I don't think it was a terrible move by Carlton. And the nature of the beast is that if you want to do something there and then, like you said, you've got to be willing to pay the price. And we were lucky to be in the right place at the right time with the right pick. And, it's great for us because potentially we've got a pick inside the top 5 next season. You wouldn't expect Carlton to, even though their forward line looks all right now and their midfield is going to improve, but you still can't see them finishing above, sort of 14th, I wouldn't have thought. So, as long as we finish as expected in the top half a dozen, it's essentially, pick, 12 for pick 5, really.
12 and 19.
Or 12 and 19. But yeah, we get a second rounder in a different trade as well, don't we?
That was the next trade that we got was from GWS, and but that actually is essentially it's Carlton's pick. So we've got Carlton's first and second next year. So we're in a great position, no doubt about it. But I think, Mac, just following on from your point, I think Fiend absolutely agree with you that what you've got to do in this trade as well, you've got to assess Stoker and how he comes on, and if he ends up being a really good player for them, then they'll be happy with the price that they paid.
I mean, he is an absolute need for them, though, Pete, because you've got Murphy, who's so injury prone.
Yep.
You've got Cripps, who is now starting to become quite injury prone. They need a midfielder to play immediately, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so that fell into our hands very, very nicely because they had such a need. But the other interesting thing was we found out afterwards there were apparently 6 other clubs that were calling us about our next pick as well.
Yeah.
So...
Because it was the quintessential slider pick, Nikki.
Oh, totally. And what I actually liked what we did was other clubs who did some of that pick trading announced it early. We waited till it was our pick and then put in that paperwork. So nobody else knew what we were going to do. We were creating a nice little fire sale if we needed to.
Yeah, well, Birdman nearly came out and put a bloody Crows Guernsey on him because they still had all the Crows graphics on for halfway through that call out.
I do love the cockwomble this week has to be Hamish walking out. No, Gil walking out, going to the microphone and then turning around and going straight back out again. It was the perfect Grandpa Simpsons moment.
It was fantastic.
It was brilliant. And I had the room cracking up.
Yeah.
It's just like, we know what's going on, but he doesn't. And he's running the whole bloody show.
Pete, go on, Nick.
I just have to say that I think we didn't do that our next pick. That didn't happen until Gold Coast moved up to West Coast. And I think they took who we wanted.
I think we're taking Jez McLennan, weren't we? And Gold Coast jumped in and pinched him from under our nose. So, which I was kind of surprised when I heard that because I didn't think he was the kind of player that we would be after. But who knows? Obviously, they rated him.
Yeah, the one you didn't mention, Pete, too. The offer that we put on the academy lad, which I thought was pretty shrewd as well.
Oh yes,
got North Melbourne up the
on Briggs.
Yeah.
Or Taryn?
No, Taryn.
Yeah, because
we didn't put one on Briggs, but we had GWS thinking we were going to, which was very sneaky.
Yeah, and I think that had a little bit to do with the pick swap with them as well.
Yeah. So getting North out of the way later in the draft was a good thing because they had to spend their points.
That was a good thing.
Yep.
And then, sorry, Frank, go on.
No, keep going, mate.
So then we moved down to our pick 30 was Will Hamill, a left foot player, running halfback player. So I think that he may have been the sort of the second option after McLennan. Yeah,
I really like the look of that kid as well. Again, pretty quick and on the left is always handy. He reminds me of a bit of Simon Goodwin with a bit more pace.
Yeah, I thought he reminded me of, and I actually had a typo on the big footy board. I said Polak instead of Polek. But Polak's the guy that walked into the tram. And he
was polaxed.
Yeah, he got polaxed.
He certainly wasn't. He's at this stage he's very gangly and he looks very loose and all the rest of it. But he moves beautifully. He's very, very quick, and he's got a lovely boot on him. He's just got a little classy kick. The one thing I thought about Polak when he played for Port was that he wouldn't die to get the ball, but once he got the ball, he could be pretty deadly with it and moved very smoothly. And we are talking about Will Hamill, aren't we?
Yeah, Will Hamill. Yep.
Yeah.
And
you can talk about whoever you like, Maka. It's fine.
Well, I just think he looks like he's going to be a talent, I think.
Yeah, I like him.
I really like him as well. Like he's that skinny even against those other boys. And some of that intercept marking he was doing running back with the flight of play, beautiful judgment of the ball in the air, knows he's going to get it some good hands, but not scared to do so.
How tall is he?
So that's what.
How tall is he, do you know?
Oh.
Does anyone know?
Just bear with me one moment.
Sorry.
Yeah, let Phoenix look that up. But that's his pick, and definitely the next one, I think, are very much a warning to Atkins of pull your finger out or we'll trade you because here's your replacements.
I think there's a few lining up for that.
PJ Crows just raises it was interesting that Riley Collier-Dawkins... So Riley Collier-Dawkins?
Hamill's 185, by the way.
185, thanks, mate.
Yeah.
That's a nice size.
I had a pretty reliable tip that RCD interviewed pretty badly and made it none too subtle that he wouldn't be moving, wasn't keen to move out of Victoria, so he slid all the way down to Richmond in what was quite a surprise slide. I think a lot of people had him going a lot earlier than that, but he was one of the, as I understand it, one of the major flight risks of the draft.
It was a dual mummy's boy.
Yep. So,
but there were a lot of other Victorian teams that still had picks around there. They weren't interested in him either. That were rumoured to be interested in him, and they went, nah.
This seemed to be the draft for players sort of hinting that they didn't want to go anywhere. I heard stuff about the King twins, Isaac and Luco early on. We heard they didn't want to move.
Rankin was very bullish about Adelaide.
Yeah, like it seemed to be like they, player managers were like, just go out and do it, or they just forgot about the media training this time. But it would just seem to be that there were less care was given to the lip service of I'll play anywhere and I can't wait to be the captain of that club.
Well, look, when they nominate for the draft is open to 18 clubs to select them, and I think the AFL again showed how piss weak it is, because as you said, it made no comments at all whatsoever about virtually some of these Victorians, and to a lesser degree Rankin, making it very clear they didn't want to go interstate. And, I just think that that sort of business, as I say, it's an open competition. If it's going to be fair, 18 clubs, and those lads, they nominate. Once they nominate, it's a raffle for them where they're going to, and that's where it should start and end.
Yeah. Although there should be some discussion about whether AFL just fold Gold Coast. I think they should get rid of it. It's just a pain. No one wants to play there. It costs them too much money. Oh, it's just silly. There's no market there. There's no growth. Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
Then we drifted all the way down there, pick 64, which was Lachlan Scholl, son of or nephew of Craig Scholl that played for North Melbourne.
Yeah, Brett Scholl's son.
Yeah.
Oh, Brad Scholl, sorry.
No, Brett.
And a couple of uncles played as well. Yeah.
So Brett Scholl played for Carlton a little bit, and then you had the Scholl that played for North, as you mentioned. I think he's an uncle.
Oh, okay. Yep. Any thoughts on Lachlan Scholl?
Just another runner. Just another runner with a big...
With lovely skills on both sides of the body.
Yeah, big lungs, and doesn't mind getting the ball. So, he averaged over 24 disposals in his TAC Cup year. So, I mean, that's not bad across half-back.
Well, my take on him was that he's the most speculative pick in the sense that, obviously at 64, left fancied. And PJ Crows just raised an excellent point. It's very hard to work out whether he's a right footer or a left footer. I think he's a right footer who kicks very, very well with his left. But he's got... I saw virtually every attribute in his game bar one. I didn't see him as fierce to get the ball and very hard. Now, that was probably the one thing... And look, maybe he is, and it didn't show up in his highlights, but that was the one thing that was missing for me. And if he is a genuine hard-at-it type player, he's certainly got plenty of other assets and skills that he brings to the team. So, look, it's up to him. If he wants to get in there and get the ball, he'll probably go all right, and if not, he'll join the others.
Plays like Isaac Smith, I reckon.
Yeah, he does. He does quite a bit. That look, that kind of raky but beautiful skill. I do like, though, that we moved. This was where we did a pick trade where we moved up to get in front of Geelong, and the look on their faces when we picked him was delightful.
Yeah, so we must have rated him somewhat to actually do that.
Oh, no, we knew Geelong wanted him as well.
Yeah, we wouldn't just take him for spite, though. But
it's interesting. We've got a matching set of midfielder forwards who run all day, are quick, and tackle very well. in the first 2 picks, and our last 2 picks are a matching set of halfback flankers that can move onto the wing with great endurance and speed. It's a double matching set. We kind of picked.
Oh no, I think they've obviously worked out their needs very, very well, and then certainly picked for those particular needs. And so very hard for us to criticise what they've done on paper, because we've sat there in the cloisters all last year saying we're too big, too many out forward, and blah blah blah, etc. We need some players with pace and foot skills, etc., and we've got them. So
and ferocity.
Oh, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
And so I think they have drafted for what we need. And if you take a jigsaw puzzle, and I hate to quote Port Adelaide because I always had the missing link, but we might just have got those missing links amongst these lads.
They've got a few missing links over there.
And then, interestingly enough, continuing your theme, Nicky, of kind of almost pairs, we then went tall in the rookie draft. So we first went for Kieran Strachan, who was a young ruck player at pick 7 in the rookie draft.
Yep, 23, Pete, 202.
Oh, 23, is he?
Yeah.
And then Jordan Butts at pick 39, who is a key position player.
Seymour.
Yeah, he's 195 centimetres.
So we went tall in the rookie draft.
And, of course, Hunter in the middle there, which is interesting that we went Hunter. So that kind of told me that there was possibly another team was actually interested in Paul Hunter.
And where's been training with us the whole thing?
He has, but the fact that we picked him as our second rookie pick, whereas most of the other clubs, when you go through and you look at who they pick up at the rookie drafts, when they redraft their own players, they're either redrafting another of their own players or they're passing. So that kind of told me that I think there might have been some interest elsewhere that made us go a little bit early on picking Hunter up. But on Butts, oh, God, everybody's going to have so much fun with this poor kid's surname, who I bet you he's heard everything, but
I think Donkey nailed it.
What's funny about his surname?
Nothing.
Oh.
The fact that this year he's been playing defence all year for most of it, whereas his TAC Cup year he actually played forward. So he can play either ends of the grounds, but I think he's very much the Talia Hartigan replacement.
No, I think it's a shit of a name, actually, but I wouldn't want it.
You're scraping the bottom of the barrel here, Macca.
I know, but that's where I am, mate.
You're cracking me up, Donkey.
Oh, you guys are so punny.
He's a guy you can really get behind.
Oh, God.
I'm going to dread when he gets in the team.
I think he'll be playing down back anyway.
I guess out of all of that, there were 2 players that I was really disappointed that we missed out on, notwithstanding the obvious, because we were never in the hunt. But I was disappointed we missed out on Jackson Haitley for a couple of reasons, and one of them was his mother. My God. But
Oi.
I thought that he would have been a really good pickup and a really good fit for us. And the other one that I couldn't quite work out, and we obviously sacrificed him with our pick swap, was Valenti. I had a feeling we'd take him, and it was a shame that he got snapped up by Freo just before our next pick, because I wondered whether we would have taken him then. But I would have liked to have seen Valenti in our squad as well.
Well, he's a very good footballer, Valenti, but given our emphasis on pace and speed, do you think we still would have taken him?
Well, you're right, Macca. That's the only knock on him, is that he's a bit one-paced, but he's silk, and he's a bit of an accumulator. He gets the agate, so, you know.
He can play. We're not looking...
Mitch Grigg Mark II.
I was bitterly disappointed as well, Fiend, particularly over Jackson Haitley, and he was one that I really, really wanted to get to the footy club. But all you can, I mean, the only way you can rationalise it is as we've spoken about, there seems to have been a clear theme, and neither Jackson or Luke really fitted that theme. I think that's really the only way that you can put it, because as good a qualities as those two players bring, they are different, styles of players to the ones that we chose.
The good thing about the good thing about Haitley though was, who did he get drafted by?
Yeah, I know.
GWS.
Yep.
I know. 2 years time.
And they've got enough players in that role that he plays that are currently in the team.
I actually didn't understand why GWS picked him up, to be perfectly
frank.
They were very keen on him.
I think out of the 3 South Australians that went in the top that went elsewhere, I think he's the most likely, easiest possibly to get back.
Well, his mum was shattered, wasn't she? She was crying.
Although he did say that she's emotional, and even if I got drafted, she was going to cry, and she nodded her head at the same time and kept crying. So I don't think you can.
There was some very strong mail around that that the family had been given a very strong indication by Port Adelaide that he would be taken at their pick 10 or pick 11, as it turned out to be.
Oh, right.
And something sort of went wrong at the last moment, and they decided to go with was Butters.
Yeah,
I think they end up going with it, pick 11.
Yes, it is.
And so Jackson then slipped past Port, and so I honestly I had pretty good mail that they weren't expecting to be going to an interstate side on draft night, and then all of a sudden he was, and so I think that was where the emotion probably was.
I really like Haitley as a player. I know we've gone from speed and ferocity and all the rest of it, but he is a big player, like in the mode of Cripps type, and he's big, and a big midfielder wouldn't hurt amongst the ones that we do have, and he's very good at getting the ball, and he's very good at using the ball too. So, and he likes being involved in the play. He's got. To me, he's just got a lot of things I really like about him, and I do hope that, I'd like to see him back in a Crows Guernsey in a couple of years' time, if that's possible. Maybe it's not, but if it was, I'd be very happy.
I agree. Very frustrated at some of the analysis of Jackson Haitley with this whole thing of being, a bit slow, doesn't kick that well, a bit vanilla, a bit this, bit that, and I don't know. I just think that. I think that he'll surprise, and he'll be one of the best picks out of this draft. And he has, he has so much of it. He played in the SANFL and won the equivalent of the Rising Star, and he played same amount of games as Lukosius and Rankin, I think, or roughly. And he was the one that won the SANFL Rising Star. Like, he played really solid football at SANFL level. And I think that not quite sure why we think that he didn't have a point of difference when he was a 192 centimetre goal kicking mid.
Yeah,
I really
couldn't agree more with you, Peter.
See when you've got guys like Cripps and Kennedy and Fife and these kind of guys, these big-bodied midfielders, and we just don't have one.
Yeah,
and I do feel going with Chase. Well, Hamish knows a lot more than me, but I feel that our midfield is very sameish, and
it's
I think
light.
I just think it's light, it's short, and I just I'd hope that we would have had that point of difference with Haitley at 192 centimetres, but Hamish has got a far better record than I have.
Yeah, well, I recorded all the under-18 competition, and when I watched some the replay several times, and I really loved the way Haitley played in those championships.
He's a footballer, isn't he, Macca?
Oh, dead set of footballer. And it's the best way to describe him. He is a genuine footballer. It's like Sam Mitchell was a genuine footballer, and he's just a big midfield version of that. And it's a pity. I hope we get him back.
I think what a lot of people were thinking was he was like the jack of all trades but master of none. But I think you're on that right track there, Pete, that he's actually probably the master of everything.
Quite a
except
few.
Speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But because he doesn't have a point of difference, he's good evenly, that can lull some people think into, he doesn't have this one special thing. And that's the thing I've noticed with a lot of the questions these draft guys are getting is who do you play like? Who do you model your game on? It's like, no, it's you can't fit them into they are this or they are that. They're each individuals, and there are so many different aspects to football that what they all bring. But it seems the media want to try and push they play like this person.
Often
it keeps their analysts in a job.
Yeah, often the lads do model their game on a certain player. But having said that, you are right. They won't turn out to be an identical copy of that player because they've got their own individual traits, and they'll end up being that individual.
I thought his standout characteristic though was his physical build. It was his 192 centimetres, and the fact that he's a strong overhead mark that kicks goals.
I agree wholeheartedly, Pete. It's the fact that you've got a tall midfielder that knows where the goals are and can take a grab.
Anyway, we'll see how that transpires, Nicky. I hope you're right, but I'm not one of those who seem to be blasé optimistic about the fact that we're just going to click our fingers and all these kids are going to come back in 2 or 3 years' time. Because we have such a poor record of attracting elite South Australian talent back to this state. So,
but I don't think we've had as much elite South Australian talent leave the state in a while.
No, not in one go. Never.
No. So I think that's going to be a bit different, and I think also that we should have learnt from previous ones, and by the sounds of it, we're very keen on keeping in touch with those who are externally out. So I'd be interested to see how that goes, but that's the thing is you've got to play long term, and we know Hamish tracks players long term.
I'm hopeful that pick swap was part of building a war chest, but we'll see.
I don't think there's as much value in bringing South Australian players back as there is getting them in the first place, because really once you bring a player back, you're generally his second club. So whether they're from Victoria, South Australia, or wherever initially, their second club is usually the one that they're going to stick with. So you can sort of trade a bit more for need, but if you grab an SA talent off the bat, you're far likely to have them for their whole career. And I guess, and we were talking prior to the show, Pete, I guess I have a slight disappointment that more emphasis wasn't put or effort made, not so much this year, because I think the horse had already bolted, but leading up to this season, to get ourselves into a position where we were very strong at the top end of the draft, because we would have been tracking those boys, 2-3 years out. We would have been most aware, and you would imagine that Lukosius and Rankin are going to be 200-game players, all things being equal. Connor Rosie at 5, I think, was a bit of a reach from Port, but good on them. They made the decision to draft an SA talent with their first pick, and you would imagine that Connor will, notwithstanding form or what have you, will play 200 games for Port Adelaide.
I couldn't agree more, Fiend. I just got to... Sorry, Macca, just quickly. I couldn't help but feel disappointed on draft night, and I know that we all have great faith in Hamish's selections because he's got the record, and I'm much more comfortable about it now that I've had a few days to sort of mull over it. But I couldn't help on the evening just feel like to see that all of that great young talent march out of the state was a bit hard to take. But we'll see.
But that's the way it should be, though. If we're lamenting earlier on, which we were, about Victorian players who are apparently doing that, I don't want to leave the state. And as Macca rightly pointed out, there's 18 clubs. There's only 2 in South Australia. The odds are they're not going to end up here, and that's the nature of the game. We've got Chase Jones, we've got Tasmanians. Those guys can't play in their home state because they don't have a team.
That's not really what we were saying, though.
I don't think that addresses the point. The point is that
it kind of is in a way, though, because you're saying we want these South Australians to stay in this state, but it's the nature of the game.
What we're saying is we're disappointed that the club didn't get themselves into a position to try and get some of that.
What would we have had to sell in order to do that.
I don't think
to
that's
get,
actually...
To get the ones that we needed that suit us.
Let's look at it, Nikki. This all started a couple of years ago with our failed attempt to get Bryce Gibbs back to the club. And the knock-on effect of that was that we spent first-round draft picks to get him back last year. Now, perfect world, that those first-round draft picks could have been used to position ourselves better in this year's draft. And it seems to me that as a consequence of the failed attempt in 2016 to get 2017 to get Bryce, we've had to use draft picks, and this is not a conversation about whether we paid overs or unders for Bryce. This is just the fact that we decided to use those picks on a 28, 29-year player to get him back to the club when there was probably an opportunity to use those picks more creatively, knowing that there were 3 or 4 players in the SANFL or in the state system that were likely to go top 10. So I feel like the strategy failed in previous years, which you rightly say left us a bit hamstrung this year because there was no way that the top 4 picks were going to be traded out. But I think we could have been in that conversation had we planned a little bit more carefully, and had we perhaps let the horse bolt on Bryce last year for the sake of manoeuvring our way up the draft with a few more picks to spend on pick swaps.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there that it's always that long-term strategy of how far out. And it was that stuff up of getting Bryce initially that didn't work out in our favour. But what it has done is it meant we've now got a relationship with Carlton and trading picks back and forth that we seem to be a lot more amicable to do stuff with them, and they look to us as a trading partner, it seems.
I'd rather have Rankin than a relationship with Carlton, to be honest.
I know, but you've got to kind of, okay, this is what we've got, so how can we do it? Because what I find very interesting is that on the AFL website today, or they put up the top 9 learnings or whatever out of the draft.
Yep.
And it appears that clubs have already started to go to the AFL and say, we don't want to trade just 1 year's future pick. We want to trade 2 years in advance.
And they also would like to and include players as well. They've also suggested.
Or Players Association won't like that.
I understand that, but they might get the 2-year bit.
Yeah, which I thought that tracks in with that long-term plan. So I wonder if there was a 2-year thing in advance, would we have gone after the 2020 pick instead of a 2019?
Oh, it's quite possible, Nick. But, ifs and buts and all that. Look, and I don't want to dwell on it because that would be to diminish the value of the kids that we got in. And I do think that if you use the analogy of the share market, trading is very much about making sure you've got blue chip investments, and drafting is very much about trying to pick the penny dreadfuls and speculate a little bit. And I think clubs these days are looking a little bit more at their draftees or their rookies as assets, not only on the football field but also at the trade table. And I wouldn't mind betting that there's some conversations around Elliot Himmelberg back to Gold Coast at some stage, and whether that be a conversation that is had next year or the year after with Lukosius or Rankin in mind. And you'd imagine that a few of these other players, we're not going to be able to fit all these players in. This is the point. This little Mosquitoes fleet that we've recruited, we're not going to be able to fit them all in. And they're all quality players. Not forgetting that we've got Lockie Murphy, who's the incumbent. We've got Shane McAdam, who looks ready to go. And
who's just been given the number 23.
Who's just been given the number 23, which you don't give a lad that you're not expecting to play. So we're going to have an abundance of these small players, and you just wonder whether it's just as much about trade stock down the track as it is about, team balance.
PJ Crow's just made the point about would we, when we're talking about getting hold of one of those high draft picks, and Port did that because they lost Wingard and Polak, and would we want to trade Smith and Miller for Rosie? Well, I don't think, with respect, PJ, that was Fiend's point at all, that we'd be trading out players like that. It was more an examination of the draft pick spent on Bryce Gibbs.
Well, we had the opportunity to bail out of the first round last year. That's what it boils down to, because we had the pick that we spent on Bryce, we had the pick that we got for Charlie. We had the opportunity to basically wipe our hands of the 2017 or 2017 draft, I should say, in lieu of picking up one or two South Australian boys this year. We could have manufactured that, and we decided not to. Now, you rightly point out that Port were fortuitous that they had those picks at their disposal, but there's two blokes that's going to be under severe pressure next year. One is Stocker from Carlton, because there's going to be expectations given what they paid for him. But Connor Rosie's going to be under a bit of pressure too, because Port certainly reached to get him and gave away, 4 picks to get Connor Rosie, and he's going to be under a bit of pressure as well.
Yeah, it's a good point on Himmelberg, though, Fiend. I reckon he, if he continues to develop as we think he will, he may well be in the frame, given the fact that he's a Queenslander originally.
Or
I think so.
He might be a trade to GWS with his brother for Haitley.
Look, it's possible. There's Gold Coast are going to need forwards, Mac. Might be. I don't know.
They're going to need 18 players.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point is that it's more, I think, drafting players this year is more about your stocks. It's not about your cream or your blue chip. Trading is far more about that. And I just wonder whether we did enough with what we had to position ourselves to get a couple of really good South Australian lads that would have played 200 games for us.
Well,
I guess that's my question.
I guess the only way we could have done that is if we had have beaten Port Adelaide to that pick number 5. Because I don't think that 1, 2, 3, 4 were available or would ever going to be available.
No. My point, I guess, is, though, Macca, that we could have been in that conversation had we used our picks last year to get ourselves up this year.
Sure,
if we'd have traded,
there's also opportunity costs about having a list that's going to challenge for a flag, and none of us saw us falling off the cliff the way we did, and putting someone like Bryce Gibbs into an already pumping midfield was probably a good move too. So I just don't. I think if you're looking at it about how do we only get really high draft picks in, that's a great move, but we're about winning footy, and you talk about all the time about making big moves that actually get things done, and that Gibbs move was a big move that tried to get something done. So you can't on one hand sit there and say we're too conservative and never make moves, and then when we do try it, go, oh my God, that was the stupidest thing in the world. I just don't think you can. I think it's duplicitous at both positions.
Yeah, but we had more than just that pick though that we spent.
Oh, I know.
We didn't have to use the other pick that we used to pick Gallucci. I mean, Gallucci's a good player. But
maybe for the year before, but
would you trade Gallucci for Isaac Rankin, for the opportunity at Isaac Rankin? I would. I mean, this is, I guess, what I'm talking about. Without being too in depth and detail and all the rest of it, Donkey, I think there were opportunities, given what we've had over the last couple of years in terms of picks, to be able to manipulate the situation to get ourselves in the top half a dozen this year without having to do any trades of picks this year like Port had to do. I think we could have been already there had we used our picks in previous years more wisely. And I'm not saying that Gibbs was a bad move, because you're right. We were shooting for a premiership. But we still had a couple of other picks up our sleeve that we could have utilised.
I think the club is definitely actually doing something on that, though, because you look at now I hope I pronounced this correctly, but Vinik Kotutuwaku, who was the data expert, who was sitting in there. So we've had him employed since February. Now he apparently does work with NBA clubs on drafting, etc. And so we've had him since February looking over our past drafting and he was integral. He was one of those four sitting on that table.
Well, you beat me too, Nicky. I can raise him.
Time. Yeah, so I think that the club's definitely recognised we could be doing better. We're actually seen as one of the top drafters.
Yeah, true.
But we're going, no. We need to still improve on this as well.
The interesting thing is the chap that you're talking about, and I can't pronounce his name. It's a pretty big name. And he's the one that was sitting back with the glasses at the back. There was two of them sitting there. And they were, I was reading that he specialises in trades and in America, Moneyball bloke, and he's got all these various algorithms he uses to come up with it, and God knows what they would be. But apparently we've had him, as Nicky said, we've had him involved since February.
Can I just quickly relate a story? I was in a conversation, just a social function, and was chatting to a gentleman that was involved with Port last year in a similar capacity. And I thought this would be a really interesting conversation to find out about all of this stuff. And I'd known this person previously, and he wasn't a big football person at all. But again, he same thing, Macca. He started talking about algorithms, and honestly, if I understood even one word that he was talking about, I'd relate it and I'd tell you all about it. But I could not repeat what he was talking about, even if I wanted to, because I was lost, I reckon, in the first 30 seconds of the conversation. Absolutely no idea what he was talking about, other than the fact that at the end of the conversation, and he finished with, and that's how he came up with those draft picks.
Yeah, well, the guy does have a massive reputation, apparently, and apparently he's got the performances on the board, so it'll be very interesting to see. He was very much one of the masterminds behind the trades too, apparently. Working out, again, the values and all the rest of it with all these various algorithms. But and I think we could probably work those out, but that might be where it starts and stops for us. But very interesting to see that that's the sort of thing that I just find so intriguing, and I will just slip in one liner here. I can't understand why we would go to so much technical detail and so much trouble, which is the right thing to do, and then keep a bloody idiot like Burton on.
It's dickhead, not an idiot.
Someone's got to count the rubber bands and test their elasticity in the cupboard. Okay.
Transfer him over to the souvenir shop. Get him out the back there packing the parcels. That's where he belongs.
There's only
new management, unfortunately, Macca.
Yeah, there's only one problem I've got with Moneyball and the AFL, and I really like that analytical approach, and I'm glad that the Crows have got this bloke on board. But the difference between American sports and Australian sports is that American rookies are known quantities. They have exposed form at the ages of 18, 19 and 20 years of age through the college system. They are known qualities. Kids of 17 years of age are not known quantities, and AFL clubs have to spend time and money developing these kids. And often, a bad injury or a crowded spot in the first 22 will starve a kid of opportunities, and he'll end up dropping out of the system. And I don't know whether the approach that is used in the NBA and the NFL and the Major League Baseball is appropriate in the AFL system, where there is not as much exposed form against adult bodies. I agree with that, Fane, because there's just not a big enough data set to be able to draw the conclusions that they're making concrete assumptions off of when they're making maybe trading picks. But if you're using stats to back up who you're trading for and why you're trading for them, there's probably more of a value of the Moneyball system when that's about the complete list of your list and having different things.
PJ makes the point, Donk, that he's not involved in actually the talent ID, only in the pick value, the draft history, the list profile, etc.
Yeah, but that's a knock on though. That's a knock on though.
That's why we've had him. I reckon that's why we've had him since February.
But that's a knock on Macca anyway. Whether it's about talent ID or whether it's more analytical than that, those statistics are flawed because we're dealing with kids that aren't like there's no consistency in terms of pick history and all that sort of stuff because quite simply the talent that's been selected at those picks in the past have been kids that don't have exposed form. So it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about picking individuals. I'm talking about the whole pool. The whole pool is there's too many unknowns. There's too many question marks about late teen development, etc., etc. So even his historical data probably doesn't have the validity that it would in the American system.
Well, it'll be very interesting because we're not the only club doing it. There are other clubs doing it as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether it is of any benefit or whether, as you say, that. And I understand your point because they do track these kids from the age of 13 and they follow them all the way through. But that is a lot different than playing against men and playing a different type of football, which is much more ferocious and faster and more skilled, etc., etc. So your point is very, very valid in the sense that in the college football, there is a pattern that they're playing, and the college football's got a massive following, so it's treated just as seriously as the big time. And
it's just the age, Macca. I mean, they don't get drafted until they're 20 years old.
Yeah, you're talking about maturity here now, and so, but I'm 22. I'm sure that this guy with his algorithms and whatever he's got up his sleeve, what he uses, and he must have some tricks that work because otherwise we wouldn't be considering hiring as other clubs also doing the same thing. So I think, well, let's say good on the club for trying to do something. Now let's have a look and see how it works out.
I'm certainly not bagging the club, Macca, because I think it is a good way to go about things, and hopefully over time the intricacies of the AFL system and the Australian sport landscape in the junior systems and all that sort of feed into the database and make his algorithms and all that a little bit more solid. I guess from my perspective at this stage, I don't want to harp, but in my opinion, the value of that is probably a little bit less than it would be in the American system. That's all. But good on the club for going down. I'd much rather see them doing things like that and employing Steve Saunders than some bloody dickhead who went on a drug binge down in the Nevada desert. That's for sure.
I'm not working for the club, so.
But you'll do the binge. You're a good volunteer, Donkey.
As long as there's some red wine involved, he's in.
That's right.
Yeah. The question I was going to ask, every year when you get the draft picks in, you always think to yourself how they're going to slot into the team eventually, because some might even make it in the first year, some will. And firstly, my first question is, does the panel think that any of these guys will make it next year at all for any games? And of them, who do you think is the most likely to crack it, and who's the most danger in the team?
I think the first two are a chance, but things would have to go their way. Just that they've both got exposed. Yeah, they've both got exposed form. I think, well, definitely Jones has exposed form against adults. But McHenry's size and the way he plays, he could still be an asset in that respect. So I think if McHenry comes in, he's definitely more the forward pocket. And that's probably what they would do as well with Jones, play in the forward lines.
Mm.
I'm seeing that happening when you've got Gallucci becoming more midfield. So he's the one that goes up.
Yep.
Which then means Lockie Murphy's on the cusp. Now, I love Lockie Murphy, but he's not the brightest spark out there.
No.
He doesn't understand the running patterns. The other players have said that. He just runs around.
I reckon the one under the pump is Riley Knight.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that one, Fiend. I think he is as well. I think he's had his chance to be that hard-running, sometimes tagging, niggly type of player, and he, unfortunately for injury or whatever, he's struggled.
Yeah, and
He
Ned
was gonna be my next one I
McHenry is
mentioned.
a clone in terms of his niggle and his defensive
Yeah.
action and all that sort of stuff.
I think, Nicky, the point that you make is valid particularly with Chase Jones. I think that he's one because not just the fact that he's been playing state league football as it is, but he's been starring. He's been starring down there.
Yeah.
He's been getting. He
Getting
won.
in the
I reckon.
best.
Is that right?
He won. Didn't he win an award or something down there? He got a number of BOGs. So it wasn't just that he was, running around getting a kick here and there at state league level. He was playing very, very well. He was playing a very high quality brand of football. So you would have to think that, from all accounts, he's got the engine, and you'd have to think that he would have the capacity to at least put himself in the running for a JLT spot. And then I guess that's the first port of call, isn't it? If you can get yourself into a couple of those games, then you're a chance.
And it's also going to be a
Definitely.
bit tough to watch these guys coming through without having the exposure and pressure of the AFLX competition at the start of the year to see what these guys are really made of.
But we've lost our captain.
I know. Well, and
Yeah.
and he'll be the perennial AFLX captain champion. So
Here I just have to interrupt. So here it is for you, Fiend. PJ's come through with the rescue. Jones got 12 votes in 5 games of playing in the Tassie League.
Hell.
That's not bad.
Well,
Yeah.
their medal, is that the equivalent to their medal down there or something?
we got to
Yeah.
split that over
Yeah.
2 heads, though.
The one,
So that's
just
pretty
earlier,
good form, though, isn't it?
yeah, it is. Just earlier, you were talking about McHenry and his skill set, Pete, and like obviously that fend off, etc. When I was watching his highlights and I saw that, and I thought somebody needs to get him and Miller to teach him a few little things, because he's definitely got that evasiveness. And the vision they put up of the draftees standing off to the sidelines, watching training, etc. But then they showed a little bit of vision of them doing something, which is that little keepies off drill that we do. And Miller was the player they got in there to the senior player to show them how to do it, which I thought was very interesting.
Mm.
Well, the point I was trying to make is there's going to be a lot of players that are probably going to shine in the SAFL, and they'll be pushing for spots. And McAdam would be one of those that we would hope that would be doing that. That the first 2 draftees here that we got this year, you'd hope they would be. Galucci, I'm sure, will command a regular spot this year, and blokes like Kelly and Paholke, and there'll be a couple of others. They're going to be under real pressure, aren't they?
Who? Yeah.
I think when the big difference with these two, apparently, is that they come to us with big engines. And if you've got a big engine, if you've got an AFL ready engine, then you put yourself in with a chance. Whereas a lot of the draftees that come in, need 1 or 2 years to get up to speed with the kind of endurance that's required. But when you've got that endurance, when you've got that covered, you are putting yourself in with a chance early on.
Yeah. Rory Atkins will be the other one under the pump, I reckon. I know his best is very good, but I think of the senior players, notwithstanding Dougie's coming towards the end, and you'd have to think that DMAC is sort of coming towards the end, but of those middle-aged players, Rory Atkins, I think, is the one that is most under threat, given the attributes of some of the lads that are coming through and some of the lads that we've picked up in this particular draft, because they're just about all ready-made wingmen. So it'd be interesting to see the sort of year that Rory Atkins has this year.
Yeah, plus Smithers is back this year too. So
Smith back, Brad Crouch hopefully fit and back. So there's
he's looking very nice.
He was last year. Touch wood, Nicky. Don't say anything.
Shut up, Phoenix.
I'm not saying anything.
Fingers, arms, legs, toes crossed. Can't cross my eyes because can't do that.
I'm not saying anything, but the point is that we're going to be squashed up for spots. You'd imagine Cam Ellis-Yeoman would find it very difficult to break in this year if Hugh Greenwood's form continues to move. So a lot of competition in those midfield rotations, and there's a couple.
Which is great.
Douglas and Atkins, I think, are the two in that group that might struggle, and DMAC sort of in the back half.
I think,
Nikki.
just on that, I think there was also Hamish. You notice he also said Eddie. So I think there are plans for us to rest Eddie throughout the season. So that gives you an opportunity to play some of those boys as well, if that happens. That's just reading between the lines of what Hamish, because he talked about McKay, Douglas and Eddie getting on in years, getting close to the end.
Yeah. Because the balance of the side's got to be looked at too, in the sense of Fogarty. Fogarty should be worthy of being picked this year, but how many big guys you have up forward when you've got all these little guys trying to get in there too?
Now, just before we move on from this discussion, I have to mention, of course, our fantastic sponsors over the last month or so, and what's brought my attention to it is Adam in the Spreaker chat saying, and I quote, "I'm so horny for next season."
I was wondering about that.
This is our sponsor and co-proprietor of the strawberry farm down at Mount Compass, Harvest of Flurio. We have appreciated so much their support in the back half of this year over the November period. Adam, thanks so much. I hope the season has been kind to you so far. I hope that the family weekend was successful and that you've continued to have lots of patronage down there. We'll certainly continue to support Harvest of Flurio, in the upcoming season, and I'm sure they'll continue to support us. But thank you very much to Adam and his family down at Harvest of Flurio for all your support over the last 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, well done, Adam.
Now, I reckon, I don't know, this is probably without warning, Pete, but we should probably have a Cockwomble of the year. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I like it, mate. I like it. Let's do it.
Underground, overground, wombling free. Was that Macca singing?
I think it was Magoo.
That was Magoo singing. Like, I bop along to it.
I would have been in tune.
Maybe.
So we've got some late nominations.
Set it up.
Right? We've got some late nominations coming in.
Just
Gil with his...
Sorry, just before you do, Nick, Adam does report that their biggest weekend ever was that family weekend, so that is fantastic.
Which is great.
Great
yeah,
stuff.
no, that is so good.
Yeah.
So the late nominations, as I mentioned earlier, Gil with his little walk out to the microphone, confused, then walk back again, perfect Grandpa Simpson moment. But I also think that Port Adelaide once again are making a late running with their report that they're possibly not going to make a profit. They just did one good year. They were anticipating playing finals, it seemed, in order to get their money in. Whoops.
Wow.
I think they really need to sort out their management down there. But I mean, the outstanding one this year has pretty much been the AFL. They've continually cockwobbled up.
Well, between the AFL and Cane Corns, I think it's a 2-horse race or 2-womble race, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, what about Brett Burton? Come on.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Very true.
Is he not in there?
Very true. No,
I
Donkey,
still
you're
think-
right. Stand corrected.
I'm still going to throw Port Power recruiting stuff in there as well.
They make me laugh.
Well,
Right, so the cockwobble. So here's the sort of how to be nominated. You have to do something particularly stupid and generally makes us laugh. The AFL generally makes us angry.
Yeah. Burton made Macca
That's
angry,
upset.
and that's no good.
Yeah. So I think that goes. Port's recruiters and their trading, that makes us laugh.
It's very true. Adam nominates the Strawberry Needle Lady. She's a cockwomble.
Who's now gone to apparently New Zealand.
Has
It's
she?
happened in New Zealand now.
No
Yep.
shit.
They found a needle and a strawberry in New Zealand.
Bloody hell. Yeah, I think Port have made a couple of collective massive stabs at Cockwomble. Their recruiting their loss of 2 South Australian players. I mean, they bag us for not retaining players,
Yeah.
but they've just lost 2 blue-chip South Australian players, one of whom they actually spent a whole lot of money in draft picks recruiting in the first place, and who was probably their best player last year.
Well, yes. You're talking about Polick.
Yeah.
I still, for mine, is still having the All-Australian squad ruckman. I think it was Matt Lobe, or if not, he was close, and getting Paddy Ryder in, and, that whole thing, and then Ryder, they had to get rid of Lobe, so Ryder could go to ruck, and so then they needed Dixon to play forward, so they had to get him in, and now Ryder's injured, they had to go back and get another ruckman again. So they had this, revolving door of ruckman and key forward players. So anyway, Port Power for mine.
Well, mine will always be the dickhead, Burton, because one man managed to ruin a whole team season.
You can't have another 20 minutes.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't
Strong.
just him, but we'll let you think that, Macca.
Credit where credit's due, Nicky.
Definitely strong.
Maybe if he doesn't get it, just a special fuck you to Brett.
Well, yeah, I'm happy with that.
Well, we've still got Macca's overall sweet and smack for the year, so I reckon Brett might have one of those.
That's why I'm leaving Burton out of it. Yeah, see, I don't even bother with Burton in the Cockwobble because I know Macca's going to take it.
And he doesn't make us
He's
laugh.
going to cover it for me.
You're dead set
Yeah.
right, Nikki. It's got to be something that makes us laugh. Burton has made us laugh, but Port certainly have.
And Port certainly do. I mean, from their social media fails to their recruitment, to
their crowds,
the crowds. As much as
their stupid colours,
halfway through,
their stupid colours.
Silverteal. What the hell is Silverteal? It's aqua. Own it that you've got aqua. Come on, when Jason Momoa is Aquaman, you own aqua.
Their president.
So even though I did play mid-year, the AFL had sewn it up. I think that's because I was so angry at them. And they really do need to get their house in order, but unfortunately they're not going to. I do
Call
agree
it, Nikki.
that the laughter, it has to be Port Adelaide.
Yay! Is that like that?
And Macaroni stolen letterbox.
Look, if only we had Koshi on the show to present him with the Cockwomble Award personally, but we'll certainly send it down to the Port Adelaide Football Club, and if we do get any, acceptance speech, we'll be sure to pass it on.
Well, no, I'm glad he's not here because the Nick Dog can do a 15-minute speech.
That's the 15th year in a row that one.
Just grumpy old man, that's what I am, and I really don't care who knows it. I don't.
Macca, come on, mate.
Yes, my
Last
final
chance.
speech and smack of the years. Well, first of all, guys, there's a big sweet to you guys, and it comes from Mrs. Macca, who would like to thank you very much and for all the amusement and joy you've given her and fun just listening to you guys on Tuesdays and Sundays. And she wishes you a happy Christmas and a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And thanks a heap, and hope we can do it all again next year.
That's lovely, Mrs. Macca.
Oh,
And
cheers,
Well,
Mrs.
thank you, Mrs. Macca, and you're welcome for us taking off your hands for a couple of hours a week.
Yeah, who wouldn't be grateful? Who wouldn't be grateful, really? Think of what she's doing for those 2 hours. Macca reckons that she's listening to the CrowCast. No, she's
The
not.
dishes.
No, she's not. She's having a bath. She's having a glass of wine.
Yeah, and have you offered to do the dishes after the show, Mac? Because I remember
never.
that being an issue. No,
You have been drinking again, donkey.
He's in the Northern Territory. He's always drinking.
And also, I want to throw out a sweet to the chat people out in the chat out there. You guys actually, I think at times know more than we do, and we do steal your lines a lot. So thanks very much for that, guys.
We don't actually research anything. We just wait until they say something.
Thanks to our head researcher, PJ Crows. And
Vardy Magic.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks,
No, I have to say, at work, we don't plagiarise things. We benchmark. So us on the we benchmark against the chat all the time.
Benchmark against the chat. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, well, we ran good second. And I also would like to thank Carlton for their kind donations during the trade period. I thought that was pretty good. When we get on the smack side of things, a little bit shorter this time, but Kane Corns, I mean, you could get him 100 times and everyone would be justified. But did you hear what he see his tweet when he said, the Crows don't like taking South Australians? Well, did you see where our bloody picks sat there, Kane? I mean, picks 2 and 3, South Australian gone. Pick 5, Rosie's gone. There's only Haitley. Now, we're not going to take Haitley with our first pick. We would have taken him with our second pick. You didn't bother to take him, but that's another story. But so, Kane, you are, well, I was nearly going to say F-wit, but I shouldn't say that. You just get a smack over the head instead. So,
come on,
I think
Macca, this is your problem. You listen to him.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't listen to him, and I don't listen to Rucci. My world is so much better.
Well, ever since I've taken Rucci as a joke, it's been a lot better. So, on that note, I think that'll do for the year, I think.
Well, the only other cockwomble I'd like to shove in is that stupid hotel. What's going on with the hotel at Adelaide Oval?
Now, big smacker about that bugger, because, look, I can understand it commercially. It makes sense commercially, but I think we've got a magnificent oval. It looks beautiful with the grounds as it is. It's and then have this thing wrapped around it to destroy the overall appearance of it. I'm not for it, and with the government financing it as well.
Wasn't the whole thing that we weren't able to make the thing bigger because of the encroachment to the parklands? Wasn't that the big deal?
They've argued that it won't increase the footprint. So I don't know what they're going to knock down and bloody put it on. So
it's going to be in Eddie's pocket.
Stand?
Probably bash down the old scoreboard or something.
Maybe they're finally going to take down the Moreton Bay Figs. Anyway, thanks, Macca. Thanks, Macca, for your final sweet and smack for the year. And must say that just on a personal note, I would like to mirror what Macca said as well. Thanks to everyone who's listened over the last 12 months, everyone on the chat, pushing 500 comments again. You guys just rock up every week, and it's a lot of fun to watch the chat spin around while we're on here crapping along. Thanks to everyone also who supported us on Facebook. There's been a bit of an experiment this year that we will definitely build on next season, but it's been quite successful for us. We hope that the people that are listening on Facebook will join us again next year. It'll be far more visual in terms of being able to watch as well as listen, and we hope that it'll be enjoyable. Plus, we will have a video exclusive show next year as well that will be running on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks to everyone who listens on other platforms. We're all over the place now: Spotify, iTunes, iTunes Radio, every podcatcher you'd ever think about, Google Play, podcasts, the whole bloody lot. So thanks to everyone who's listened to us throughout the season. Thanks to all our international listeners. We have more than you'd imagine of people living not only in the States but even as far-flung as Vietnam and bloody places that you'd never imagined. So thanks to everybody internationally who's tuned in. And I would also like to say a personal thanks to the panel who have given up their time every week. Macca and Nikki on not only on Tuesdays but also on Sunday nights, and also Pete for keeping us all sane on a Tuesday night and making sure that we don't go past our bedtime with Pete around, because he's on the bloody money. Although it must be school holidays for us tonight because we're going a bit later. But Pete, thanks very much, both personally and on the cast, for all your help. And Donkey, I couldn't have thought of a better addition to the CrowCast panel this year. You've been a breath of fresh air, always positive. Some of the most outstanding fantasy footy presentations you'd ever wish to listen to.
Oh, God.
Kept Macca on the edge of his seat.
Bigger and better next season.
So
and from us, Phoenix, thank you so much for all the hard work you do behind the scenes to actually get us sounding apparently respectable.
Sometimes.
Yeah. The work you do, we greatly, greatly appreciate, because we just love talking footy. Yeah. And the fact that we get to do this is a blessing.
Yeah.
It's all well said, Nicky. And I want to echo that because it is really, without Fiend, this doesn't work. So certainly I'm not technically minded, and I don't know how he gets this to work every week, but he does all of his Fiend magic and gets us on the air. So a huge thank you to him for driving the cast. It's a huge effort. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, no worries. I certainly sleep well on Tuesday nights. But
With no computer blowing up.
Pete, just before I hand back to you, just to sign off for the year, I'd just like to say to everyone a couple of things. First of all, as I alluded to, there will be some more additions to the cast next year. We're looking at bringing back the preview cast, but it will be a video cast, and probably at this stage offered under a tier of subscription with Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, thanks also to the people that have supported us on Patreon for the year, and we will certainly be ramping that platform up in 2019. There'll be lots of exclusive content for subscribers via that channel, so stay tuned. And also people like Adam who would like to support us by offering a sponsorship. You'll be able to sponsor one of our shows either for a month or however long you like, so get around that as well. But most importantly, stay tuned to Facebook and our Twitter channel, and also our website at aflcrowcast.com, and we'll be updating that over the off-season with some pretty cool new features for 2019. Pete, you're the man. Sign us off, mate, for 2018.
I will sign us off. I'll say thanks to Macca, Nicky, Fiend and Donkey. It's been a fabulous year. We've really, really enjoyed it, and also I echo the sentiments for all of the people out there that listen and all of the people in the chat. You make it worthwhile rocking up on a Tuesday night to do this. So thanks very much once again, and we look forward to another year, having fun next year in 2019.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Good night.
Night all.